William Nicholson wrote in his 1993 production Shadowlands that we read to know that we're not alone. For LGBT youth in hostile environments, this quotation is often too true. For some, the only way to learn about sexuality and escape the feeling of isolation is through books, and ones that specifically target the issues that they deal with. The novels that they can turn to, however, are highly experimental and comprise the YA LGBT genre. With its first novel written in 1969, the genre of young adult, lesbian, bisexual, gay, and transgender fiction is a comparatively young one, and paralleled the gay liberation movement. Since its birth, the genre has grown massively, blossoming into a small industry that is rapidly reaching more and more readers. A 2011 graph created by YA novelist researcher Melinda Lowe shows a major boom in YA LGBT publication in the past 10 years. As the genre expands, it impacts more and more queer youth with content and stories. And with the pernicious level of bullying and violence, levels of bullying and high rate of suicide among queer youth, it is critical that we conduct analyses of YA LGBT fiction to ensure that they are meeting the needs of LGBT teens and that they are authentically battling stereotypes to create a more accepting future. So today, to understand the messages these novels are making, we'll first explore the literature surrounding YA LGBT novels and discuss the methods employed in this genre study. Then, we'll examine the results of the analysis before finally discussing some important implications for its developing genre. First though, let's consider the resources already out there on YA LGBT fiction. Within the literature, there are two emerging themes. One, the lack of diverse characters, and two, the notion of resilience over acceptance. First, while writers and scholars alike praise the genre's progress, they also find problem with the genre's lack of diverse voices. Popular YA novelist David Levithan said in an interview with The Wire on March 28, 2013, that there's major imbalance in terms of diversity, specifically citing a lack of lesbian protagonists and characters of color. The same issue is raised multiple times in Kenneth Kidd's and Michelle Bates' 2011 work and anthology of scholarly essays regarding the genre. The essays argue that publishers are still not open to publishing YA LGBT material centered around white, middle-class characters, in fear of missing the target audience and simply not being profitable. And second, Thomas Crisp's 2008 essay appears in the same anthology, but is largely different from the other critiques. Crisp claims the Rainbow Boys series offers a message of resilience over acceptance for its LGBT young readers. That is, that queer youth should simply harden their skin to the world instead of fighting for acceptance and rights. This message, Crisp writes, not only discourages the readers from taking action to better their situations, but also naturalizes discrimination against LGBT youth as something that will exist how it is today for all time. But to offer any additional insight into the canon, we have to have our own methods. While these writers offer solid critiques of the genre, very few perform content analysis, and those who do, like Crisp, only contextualize it within one novel or series. This study filled this gap in the literature by surveying 6 of some of those popular YA LGBT novels that have been published within the past 10 years, to illuminate the trending messages that readers are encountering. The selected novels range from David Levithan's award-winning book, Boy Meets Boy, to the darker but also more widely read What They Always Tell Us by Martin Wilson. Methodology includes a rhetorical analysis of the novels, and draw on Wayne Booth's theory of ethical criticism outlined in his 1961 work, The Rhetoric of Fiction. Booth's theory argues that novels inherently draw in and reshape their readers' consciousness by patterning their desire in the storyline, and thus majorly impacting them as readers. Now that we understand the methods of our research, let's consider the results. After analyzing the novels and cross-applying arguments made by the critical analysis works, 2 primary themes first surfaced, each spanning across most of the novels. First, that heteronormativity resonates within the relationship that the novels center themselves around. And second, that Thomas Crisp's notion of resilience over acceptance has become the norm for this genre and permeates throughout all of the novels. So while the queer community has been known to subvert heteronormative constructions of relationships, many of the books within this project actually work to support them. As Harris argues in The Rise and Fall of Gay Culture, the queer community has made every effort to be sellable, valorizing assimilation and claiming that LGBT teens yield no difference than heterosexual teens. This holds true for the YA LGBT fiction genre when analyzing relationships. The novels can see that the heterosexual, monogamous, and sexually abstinent relationships are the most desirable. Consider Dade Hamilton in Bird's novel The Vast Fields of Ordinary, who has a purely sexual relationship with Pablo, the star quarterback for the school's football team. As the only sex-only relationship that exists among all the listed novels in this project, It works to connect major instability and abuse with anything less than a formal relationship. Date only finds happiness through a conventional relationship with Alex Kincaid, showing readers that legitimate monogamous relationships as the most beneficial and the only path to happiness. Dade's route to acceptance and love, like virtually all of the characters in the genre, is derivative of a heteronormative relationship. The second theme, one of resilience over acceptance, is similarly problematic. The queer protagonists often find themselves struggling with depression, combating discrimination from peers and family members, in purposeless relationships, or similarly disheartening and repressed circumstances. This in itself is not problematic, as it well portrays the assumed life of many LGBT teens and adults in the US. They're facing a society and culture that sees the queer as lesser, as other. However, it is how the authors choose for their characters to solve their problems or escape their circumstances that is the issue here. For example, Tony, a central character in Boy Meets Boy, lives in a small town in New Jersey with extremely religious parents and faces scrutiny and disdain because he identifies as gay. Love then has constructed Tony's rejection from the home as an accepted and taken for granted aspect of Tony's life, something that he simply has to endure. This fundamentally naturalizes the bigotry that Tony is forced to face, and sends the message that one must simply weather the storm of discrimination. What this fails to do is challenge why Tony has to face the bigotry in the first place, and instead places the burden of resilience on Tony himself. This is resilience over acceptance. Finally, these two pervasive themes are having major implications for both the readers and the genre. By valorizing heteronormative relationships as superior to ones that subvert this standard, the novels are telling readers that the best LGBT individual is the one who simply mimics the straight community and follows all the conventional rules. These standards only work to repress readers, young readers, and ostracize them if they do not participate in the narrow, monogamous definition of what a relationship is according to the novels. Moreover, the genre has relinquished its ability to undermine Western conventions that dominate standards of sexuality and gender roles, selling out to consumer culture and ultimately a kind of Puritanism. And while with good intentions, resilience over acceptance is sending the wrong message to readers. By telling readers that they have to weather homophobia and abuse as young adults without placing the blame on a prejudiced society, the novels treat abuse as a rite of passage that is inherent in the LGBT life. They fail to empower the readers to fight against the discrimination that they face, instead asking them to bide their time and simply be complicit. The genre is creating a generation of LGBT members that, in lieu of demanding rights, are simply waiting in the closet. And if they're not challenging the discrimination that they encounter, who will? In conclusion, the young adult LGBT fiction genre is a great foundation and a resource for LGBT teens, but it's still in major need of content reform. Through the study, we've explored two messages that have permeated throughout the genre. First, heteronormativity, and secondly, resilience over acceptance. We've also discussed the implications that these themes are having on its readers and why it's ultimately bad for the genre. You know, Will Nicholson was right. We read to know that we're not alone, but we also read to learn. Remedying loneliness is not enough. We need to responsibly equip our youth that will allow them to create a brighter future for themselves. And this genre is one major step in doing just that.